Devesh, you're going to start videos.
Yeah, ma'am. Okay.
Atlas ISME has the undergraduate program, which is BBA. It is a program which looks at nurturing entrepreneurs, leaders, change makers.
This won't be possible until we do a highly industry integrated, highly immersive, highly experiential learning experience. And therefore we wanted to build a world-class university, a multidisciplinary university.
We believe in choice-based learning, which is the students are given a certain set of courses that they have to learn, which is their core component, and then there's something known as a minor track. So that becomes interdisciplinary within the school domain.
We started off with the basics of finance, entrepreneurship, management and marketing.
BBA offers various different subjects which are a need of the time, like entrepreneurship and business etiquettes, and even principles of management.
We're also learning business law, which really teaches you that, okay, if one day I want to start my business, I need these copyrights, I need these trademarks.
The philosophy of our school is that India needs more innovators. India needs more entrepreneurs, not just job seekers, but job creators.
We have just been inducted into the Babson Entrepreneurship Collaborative, which allows our students to build their startups of the future.
We have a Center of Innovation, Incubation and Entrepreneurship. We do our very own Atlas Shark Tank.
We've had exposure through competition. There's something called as Marketing Mania in the first year.
We ensure that our ecosystem has masterclasses run by organizational heads, CXOs, managing directors, coming in to engage with our students.
We are so close to the industry, right from the time that the curriculum is decided to the way it is delivered in terms of its pedagogy and to the final skill sets that the industry wants from our students.
Industry participates hugely in this entire process. As I said, more than 40% of our faculty come from the industry. That's one of the reasons why we are able to so confidently say that our students are relevant, and they will remain relevant.
So we have a compulsory component of an internship in their summer after every year of their program.
My internships were not just corporate internships. I, in fact, being a business student, interned with a fashion stylist as well, just to understand what goes on behind the scenes of a movie set.
We had about 80 companies come in for placements. We have EY, we have KPMG, BCG, all the big four companies, all the WPP group of companies, and of course we send them to startups as well.
You will also see the Atlas Fellows in New York University, London Business School, London School of Economics, Columbia. They're doing phenomenally well.
Campus is situated amongst corporates, but the college tries to focus on giving a very wholesome experience to each student.
By participating in club events, by participating in interactions with industry, doing a global immersion, they give them the basics of confidence, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration and compassion. So 5 C's, and you've got it all in a 3-year program. Imagine the final product that is going out there. He or she is definitely going to be the leader of tomorrow, created today.
At Atlas, we want a global mindset with local values. It's very important to harness the power of our culture, take it and bring it to the world.
Students here are
given the opportunity to engage with people from around the world. We have a lot of exchange students that come by, we have a lot of visitors that come in.
We've got great curricular partnerships with Parsons, with Vancouver Film School. We have just been inducted into the Babson Entrepreneurship Collaborative, which allows our students to build their startups of the future.
There are barely any universities that give you that kind of exposure. High Flyers is the international club which basically handles all the delegations. So we're part of all the conferences that happen with different universities like Nottingham Trent, University of Bath, Southampton, lots of universities from New York. We have Japanese delegations.
We had the Baroness of Oxford here just 2 weeks back. We had the Mayor of West Yorkshire. We had an Australian delegation.
We are going to have the International Faculty Week, where more than 20 international faculty coming in from leading universities of UK, and they're going to be conducting structured modules for our students.
For the students, it's great to see both some different content, but also a different style of delivery and a different emphasis on what's important. And that just adds another arrow to their quiver.
Global platform is what we're offering them, and students get to transfer if they'd like to at a certain point.
With transfer programs, you complete your first year here and then you go abroad to a university for the rest 3 years and complete your degree. And then there's a project-based transfer for like 2-3 weeks. And then there's like an exchange program, which is for 2 months.
So we have a lot of immersions for them to go to other international universities. We have collaborations where we do semester exchange.
I got selected for a semester exchange at HKU. It was a life-changing experience. I got to, learn from them. I got to also make friends for almost a lifetime, I think.
We do have global immersions, wherein our students travel abroad to understand the culture, the business. This year we had students go to UK.
It helps us to enroll into many summer schools which run abroad, like London School of Economics, London Business School, and many more.
We also have tie-ups with Stanford B School and Alto University, where students across the global geographies come together to work on a project.
We do projects where our students are sent for 3 weeks to universities like Utrecht, where they are doing live projects.
I worked for the live client. It was a 14-day exchange program in the Netherlands.
Something like this obviously helps in intercultural understanding, and it enriched my knowledge about the UK. We actually went to the Deloitte's corporate office and understood the work ethic over there, what people expect from international students applying for a corporate job like that.
They have tie-ups with companies like Fashion Incubator India for students to go abroad and actually experience London, Milan, Tokyo, even Paris Fashion Week.
We'll also see the Atlas Fellows want to sort of explore more academia in New York University, London Business School, London School of Economics, University of Arts London, Parsons, CAD.
University of Michigan offered me a fellowship, and that was because how much more as a person I am bringing than just design skills.
Atlas is leading the higher education sector in India towards new horizons at par with international standards.
To have created something world-class, not just by way of infrastructure, but every single experience that we curate for the student, I really think Atlas is a nation builder.
When it comes to student experience, we look beyond the classroom while looking within it to ensure that we have the best faculty producing the best kind of teaching methodologies and pedagogies.
The Atlas classroom is actually not just the classroom. It's the campus, it's the business park we work in, it's Bombay, it's the entire world around us.
There's a way of teaching that the concept gets drilled in your head, you can say, that you never forget it for life.
If I had to just learn about different types of light and write it down, I don't think I'd learn from that as much as I would by going to an exhibition. Like, they showed us the different type of light fixtures.
The real world is much more dynamic. It requires a lot more practical hands-on work. That practical learning comes here.
What we do in the 6th semester and 7th semester is we get live projects from the industry and we embed it into the actual classroom.
Colgate gave a project, so they asked our students what are the most innovative ways that we can redesign a packaging.
Another sort of project was rebranding Maharashtra tourism. So as a class, we sort of traveled Maharashtra for 1 month. We looked at the branding, we looked at advertisements for it, like ad campaigns for the university, giving us that kind of platform to really, push our boundaries and our thinking to another level.
For most of the colleges, you have a certain period in which you can only do internship or live projects. For us, they change our class timings accordingly and we can go ahead and do our internship.
Whether it's a rural immersion that happens at the end of the first semester, whether it's a community project that we insist that they do at the end of their third semester, whether it's a internship with an NGO that is compulsory at the end of their second year, we build a series of experiences where they get exposed and sensitized to different situations.
We also have a whole host of different electives that allow the student to grow beyond just their specialization.
In my second semester, I did an elective on the stock market. Who thought a design student would be studying the stock market? Now, I am India's youngest financial writer published in the Hindustan Times Live Mint.
This gives them a platform to understand, okay, hey, I'm doing business, but can I make a future in digital marketing? Maybe can I make a future in fintech? How about learning how to code?
There are barely any universities that give you that kind of exposure, that kind of options of international exposures.
When an international faculty comes and interacts with the student on specific modules, that adds a new layer of knowledge, skill and attitude.
And when I saw their presentations and research, super advanced research skills I would expect at a master's level from undergraduate level.
Here finally they're doing what they want to do. They are not actually preparing for exams. They are examining themselves.
So you're constantly pushed to your limits, constantly spread too thin, but eventually you grow, right? And that's what this whole place is about. It's about being conducive for growth.
personal takeaway from it is that one of the things I try to teach my students is that you need to be really adaptable and really flexible, and if you have those skills you can work anywhere.
I think Atlas has an international perspective, which is learning from other academics. We all learn from each other, we all inspire each other, but we all kind of look for innovation and how we can bring that innovation into our students.
Atlas's International Faculty Week is an absolutely fantastic endeavour. It's an amazing opportunity for me. It's been fantastic to meet the students, meet the faculty, to be in this kind of environment.
Atlas Skilltech University is the kind of place I wish I'd studied at as an undergrad. So Atlas has done something which is probably quite unique in this region.
I can see the skills and teaching going on. You'll also be really impressed with the faculty. I think we have to remember that your faculty are important in delivering to the students.
Atlas is concerned with the real future of its students. I think the way it's been set up is to think about or to address the question of what will be the best outcome for the student in 5 years' time.
It's a very hospitable university where you have a very large group of very motivated and passionate students that are very skillful.
When it comes to student experience, we look beyond the classroom while looking within it to ensure that we have the best faculty producing the best kind of teaching methodologies and pedagogies.
The Atlas classroom is actually not just the classroom. It's the campus, it's the business park we work in, it's Bombay, it's the entire world around us.
There's a way of teaching that the concept gets drilled in your head, you can say, that you never forget it for life.
If I had to just learn about different types of light and write it down, I don't think I'd learn from that as much as I would by going to an exhibition. Like, they showed us the different type of light fixtures.
The real world is much more dynamic. It requires a lot more practical hands-on work. That practical learning comes here.
What we do in the 6th semester and 7th semester is we get live projects from the industry and we embed it into the actual classroom.
Colgate gave a project, so they asked our students what are the most innovative ways that we can redesign a packaging.
Another sort of project was rebranding Maharashtra tourism. So as a class, we sort of traveled Maharashtra for 1 month. We looked at the branding, we looked at advertisements for it, like ad campaigns for the university, giving us that kind of platform to really, push our boundaries and our thinking to another level.
For most of the colleges, you have a certain period in which you can only do internship or live projects. For us, they change our class timings accordingly and we can go ahead and do our internship.
Whether it's a rural immersion that happens at the end of the first semester, whether it's a community project that we insist that they do at the end of their third semester, whether it's an internship with an NGO that is compulsory at the end of their second year. We build a series of experiences where they get exposed and sensitized to different situations.
We also have a whole host of different electives that allow the student to grow beyond just their specialization.
In my second semester, I did an elective on the stock market. Who thought a design student would be studying the stock market? Now, I am India's youngest financial writer published in the Hindustan Times Live Mint.
This gives them a platform to understand, okay, hey, I'm doing business, but can I make a future in digital marketing? Maybe can I make a future in fintech? How about learning how to code?
There are barely any universities that give you that kind of exposure, that kind of options of international exposures.
When an international faculty comes and interacts with the student on specific modules, that adds a new layer of knowledge, skill and attitude.
And when I saw their presentations and research, super advanced research skills I would expect at a master's level from undergraduate level.
Here, finally, they're doing what they want to do. They are not actually preparing for exams. They are examining themselves.
So you constantly push to your limits, constantly spread too thin, but eventually you grow, right? And that's what this whole place is about. It's about being conducive for growth.
I think passion for making sure that every child is a success story. I think each of us in the team has that passion.
So it's really a common dream, a common vision that sets everyone on fire over here.
It's a place for natural blossoming. The way Atlas teaches is not just by textbook, but it teaches us to teach ourselves. They literally help you with every single step. Like even if you annoy them to like repeat it probably 100 times, they will go ahead and do it. When you're lost and you're feeling very disoriented, you don't have your family here. So at that point, the faculty plays a very, very important role. Because at that moment, you need someone you trust enough to hold your hand.
They push you in the deep and they let you like swim up, like drown a bit, but then they also like your lifeguard to, you know, get you back and help you.
Faculties are key to the academic journey of students. So it's a conscious call of the kind of faculty we build in. You have experienced, seasoned, senior faculty members who worked many years in the industry and then decided to come to academia. You have younger faculties also.
And it's not just young in terms of age, it's in the way they sort of think. And what that does is, it makes the faculty of Atlas very accessible to the students, also very relatable to the students.
I sing, I dance, I do voices, I speak other languages to them, and they love it.
I have been a learner in this space. It is something that you walk into a classroom and you have an equal engagement. You have kind of equal potentials coming together on the table. You have equal contributions.
Also, all of them are like walking encyclopedias. So they would suggest you like case studies and research papers.
Faculty specialize and do research in the areas in which they teach. They're very knowledgeable in their subjects, and they can maintain high standards of academic rigor.
They also bring in a lot of different learning styles and pedagogy, and then you have your industry experts.
Having an urban campus in Mumbai, and especially located very close to BKC, where you have largest corporates available for you to work, we have people from IBM, TCS, these organizations coming and teaching with us.
For PR, my faculty at Ad Factors, he's the group head. Another professor who's a consultant for McKinsey, L'Oreal.
There's foodpreneurship. So how to start a food business. This is being done by a professor who himself has a food startup.
For example, I have actually spent about 13 years in the industry, and then I've stepped into academia, and I could build the curriculum based on my industry experience.
We have a very, very strong international connect. We are going to have what we call as the International Faculty Week, where more than 20 international faculty coming in from leading universities, and they're going to be conducting structured modules for our students.
So it's all about creating meaning, and one thing that we were working this week actually was how are you embedding your values in what you're doing?
I think for the students it's great to see both some different content but also different style of delivery and a different emphasis on what's important, and that just adds another arrow to their quiver.
So really you have
you're not settling for the second best, you're settling for the best. And you're doing this right here in India.
That give you that kind of exposure, that kind of options of international exposures.
When an international faculty comes and interacts with the student on specific modules, that adds a new layer of knowledge, skill and attitude.
And when I saw their presentations and research, super advanced research skills I would expect at a master's level from undergraduate level.
Here, finally, they're doing what they want to do. They are not actually preparing for exams. They are examining themselves.
So you constantly push to your limits, constantly spread too thin, but eventually you grow, right? And that's what this whole place is about. It's about being conducive for growth.
I think passion for making sure that every child is a success story. I think each of us in the team has that passion. So it's really a common dream, a common vision that sets everyone on fire over here.
It's a place for natural blossoming. The way Atlas teaches is not just by textbook, but it teaches us to teach ourselves. They literally help you with every single step. Like even if you annoy them to repeat it probably 100 times, they will go ahead and do it.
When you're lost and you're feeling very disoriented, you don't have your family here. So at that point, the faculty plays a very, very important role. Because at that moment, you need someone you trust enough to hold your hand.
They push you in the deep and they let you swim up, drown a bit. But then they also your lifeguard to get you back and help you.
Faculties are key to the academic journey of students. So it's a conscious call of the kind of faculty we build in. You have experienced, seasoned, senior faculty members who have worked many years in the industry and then decided to come to academia. You have younger faculties also.
And it's not just young in terms of age, it's in the way they sort of think. And what that does is, it makes the faculty of Atlas very accessible to the students, also very relatable to the students.
I sing, I dance, I do voices, I speak other languages to them, and they love it.
I have been a learner in the space. It is something that you walk into a classroom and you have an equal engagement. You have kind of equal potentials coming together on the table. You have equal contributions.
Also, all of them are walking encyclopedias. So they would suggest you case studies and research papers.
Faculty specialize and do research in the areas in which they teach. They're very knowledgeable in their subjects, and they can maintain high standards of academic rigor.
They also bring in a lot of different learning styles and pedagogy. And then you have your industry experts.
Having an urban campus in Mumbai, and especially located very close to BKC, where you have largest corporates available for you to work, we have people from IBM, TCS, these organizations coming and teaching with us.
For PR, my faculty, at Ad Factors, he's the group head. Another professor who's a consultant for McKinsey, L'Oreal.
There's foodpreneurship. So how to start a food business. This is being done by a professor who himself has a food startup.
For example, I have actually spent about 13 years in the industry, and then I've stepped into academia, and I could build the curriculum based on my industry experience.
We have a very, very strong international connect. We are going to have what we call as the International Faculty Week, where more than 20 international faculty coming in from leading universities, and they're going to be conducting structured modules for our students.
So it's all about creating meaning. And one thing that we were working this week actually was how are you embedding your values in what you're doing?
I think for the students it's great to see both some different content but also a different style of delivery and a different emphasis on what's important. And that just adds another arrow to their quiver.
So really you're not settling for the second best, you're settling for the best. And you're doing this right here in India.
Atlas ISME has the undergraduate program, which is BBA. It is a program which looks at nurturing entrepreneurs, leaders, change makers.
This won't be possible until we do a highly industry integrated, highly immersive, highly experiential learning experience. And therefore we wanted to build a world-class university, a multidisciplinary university.
We believe in choice-based learning, which is the students are given a certain set of courses that they have to learn, which is their core component. And then there's something known as a minor track. So that becomes interdisciplinary within the school domain.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining in on time yet again. As we get started, I have a few key points that I would like everyone to kindly keep in mind. We have in store for you some profound speakers today as well. We would like everyone to absorb all the key learnings that the speakers will be sharing. And at the same time, we would like you to engage with our speakers through your questions. So you'll notice a Q&A section on your screen. I request you all to please post your questions there, and our moderator will take those at the end of the session. At the end of each session, we will also post a form in the chat. I request you to please fill this form in order to obtain your e-certificate. All e-certificates for the sessions you attend will be sent to you by email after we conclude the summit. So I trust we have all noted these key points. Hello, Hina ma'am.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
So ma'am's our Pro Vice Chancellor. Ma'am, if you would just like to greet our speaker and participants.
It's absolutely a pleasure to welcome the first speaker of the day, Professor Justin Paul. And we have Dr. Parag Amin to thank for having connected us with him. We look forward to a very engaging session, and thanks to all the participants who've been with us since the last half an hour, waiting for the session to begin. So without taking much time, I request Dr. Parag Amin to introduce the speaker of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ina ma'am. Good evening, everybody. And let me ask the most important question of the millennium. Am I audible and visible? So we are in the digital world, and I think this is a question that most of the webinars would start with. It's actually my proud privilege and pleasure to be introducing my good friend, Professor Justin Paul. Like a good student, I have actually prepared a complete note on what Professor Justin Paul is all about. And I was wondering that if I really read the entire document, I might possibly eat up into the time that has been allotted for the keynote speech of Dr. Justin Paul. And I'm sure all of us are more excited to listen to him. However, I cannot really restrain myself from highlighting a few points about my good friend, Mr. Paul. Dr. Justin Paul is a chief editor of International Journal of Consumer Studies. And I would also like to add here that there's another dimension to Justin Paul's personality. He's also what I call as a turnaround man, because he turned around the fortune of Indian International Journal of Consumer Studies from what it was in 2019 to what it is or what it became in 2023. Just to share some statistics, in 2019, there were around 500 odd submissions that they used to get, the journal used to get. And with Justin Paul, taking care of the International Journal of Consumer Studies as the chief editor, the number of papers rose to over 2,300 by the time we went into 2023, and I'm sure that in 2024 possibly we will break all the records. If that is not enough, he is among the top 86 highly cited professors in the area of business and economics in the world. His citations are increasing at a record rate of 950 per month. That is phenomenal. And with an H index of 78. While I got tired doing one PhD, I must share that Justin Paul has completed 3 PhDs. One from University of Brighton, England, one from IIT Mumbai, and the third one from Kolkata. He has published 3 best-selling case studies with Ivy and Harvard. He is an author of several books in the domain of management. He has more than 75 papers that are in A or A-star journals of ABDC list. That is quite an enviable track record, I must admit. He is a former faculty member with the University of Washington. He is a professor of MBA and director research at University of Puerto Rico, USA, and is a visiting professor at University of Reading, UK. He has also served as MBA director and AACSB coordinator at Nagoya University, Japan. As an academician, he also has a very enviable contribution in terms of the various models that he introduced. Just to quote a few, he introduced the Mastich model and measure for branding, the CPP model for internationalization, scope framework for small firms, the 7P framework for international marketing, and several more. He has taught, he is truly an international faculty. He has traveled more than 70 countries. And I would possibly like to name a few of them. He has taught full courses in Denmark, France, Lithuania, Poland, and he has also been a keynote speaker for more than 200 conferences, and I think including Atlas Skill Tech University's keynote address that he is going to deliver today. He was also visiting professor at University of Chicago, Vienna University of Economics and Business, Austria, and quite a few universities in China and Spain. He is also an associate editor for several leading magazines in the realm of management research. And needless to say that these magazines possibly would also undergo a turnaround the way he turned around the International Journal of Consumer Studies. And just like to welcome Dr. Justin Paul. It has really been honor and a pleasure. Every time that I've heard you, you have added something new to me. And I look forward to your keynote address. Thank you very much. Welcome, Justin, to this conference, AAROHAN 2.0, and request you to deliver your keynote address. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Parag Amin and Professor Varsha Agarwal and Professor Hina, Vice Chancellor, and other dignitaries, faculty members, and students. It's an honor for me to associate with your university. Your university is doing extremely well in terms of international linkages, as well as the source persons and professors from different countries and universities. And I would like to take this opportunity for congratulating the organizers of this conference, because such conferences add value in terms of disseminating the knowledge. Because knowledge, when we think about knowledge, something that Professor Varsha knows, I may not be knowing it. Something that Professor Hina or Professor Parag knows, I may not be knowing it. Each one of us has learned different aspects of our subject, different aspects of teaching or research. So we need to share the knowledge that we have in different ways. So I've been asked to deliver a speech on publishing in international journals. Publishing in academic journals is an important exercise that each university has to undertake in terms of intellectually rigorous capital, because each university need to get accreditation and each university need to get recognitions as well as rankings and all these kind of things. For example, AICSB accreditation requires publications. Each professor need to be scholarly academic based on publications and so on. So I would like to give you some ideas and suggestions that will increase the probability of your acceptance as well as minimize the probability of your rejections. And my talk is based on my experience as an author as well as an editor. This is my 5th year as editor-in-chief of International Journal of Consumer Studies, and my job primarily, I mean, almost every week I spend about 40 to 50 hours looking at manuscripts coming from all over the world. Yesterday, I had a dilemma. Let me begin with the situation of dilemma. I received a manuscript from Copenhagen Business School, this manuscript is co-authored by a very senior professor from University of Cambridge Judge Business School in our journal. I was looking at the manuscript. Manuscript is reasonable, but not that great. So, but manuscript has come from very top, written by professors from Europe's top 2 universities. So sometimes editors face this kind of dilemmas, and I would like to suggest and give you certain tips so that you can improve the manuscripts. And sometimes what happens, we all are human beings as an authors. Authors submit manuscript to different journals in hurry because human beings have a mindset to get things done overnight. People do not have the patience. For example, before you submit the manuscripts, you have to read and reread, revise and refine it 5 times. This is a very fundamental principle. But many of us, or most of the authors, doesn't matter whether you are from University of Cambridge or University of Oxford or Harvard University or from an unknown institution in India, it doesn't matter. Sometimes people are in hurry. That creates problem. That result into rejections and rejections, because journals will reject a manuscript which has even 1 or 2 errors. So error-free manuscript is a prerequisite. And with this introduction, I would like to share my PowerPoint and give you some precise information based on my PowerPoint. Let me see, where is the share button? Oh, it says share button. You have to enable me to share. Currently it's only for host.
You can share, sir. You are co-host.
But when I clicked on the button, it says host only. Okay. Let me try. But I need to see the share button screen.
Are you able to see it, sir, now?
Yeah, I see share now.
Yeah, it is there.
Only panelists can share time.
Yes, sir, we can see your screen. Yeah.
You can see my PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Okay, but it just disappeared from my area, but you can see that should, okay. Something happened strange. Something happened, oh my God. Okay, let's see. All right. To begin with, generalized approach. Follow generalized approach. Can you see my PPT now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Follow generalized approach. Generalized approach is important. This is because international journals would like to publish articles that will be useful for audience from different countries. So when they want to select articles that are likely to be downloaded by people from different countries, you need to write, you need to master the art of writing an article with a generalized approach, which means your introduction, you should highlight the importance of your topic rather than highlighting the country context. Why your topic is important, where is the research gap, and what is new and unique in your topic. All these are part of generalized approach. And the next point is,
So I think you need to change slide if I'm not wrong. Can you check at your end?
can you see my PPT now or no?
I can see the title slide, sir.
No, it's not the title slide. I'm on a different slide. So that means
Yeah.
you are not able to see now, right?
Yes. So we can see the title slide as of now.
I already moved to the next slide. So I'm moving the slides. Can you see the different slide now? Only title slide.
No, we cannot see the next slide.
Yeah, that means there is some problem. So that means I have to share this again. Yeah, so share button that moved to some other place. That's why I got confused. Share screen. Shares.
So you already shared the screen, but you just need to change the slide.
Okay, let me see.
Yeah, now you can share again.
Yeah, I'll share again. Simply saying preparing slides.
Yeah, it is. I think it is loading. It's coming.
Normally it doesn't take that much time.
You can send me by email as well. I can run it via my end if you want.
Okay, I can talk without that also because we're wasting time because you have another speaker also. So it simply says preparing slides. But yeah, so the next point, PowerPoint cannot read. It says PowerPoint cannot read. So okay, level to important says.
So maybe you can try putting it on the chat box and one of us can possibly share it for you. That's another option.
Second. I have another file. Maybe that it could be a problem with that file. So okay, can you see now?
Yes, sir.
We can see title slide, sir. Just try changing once so that we can see the next slide. That's all.
You're on mute, Professor Paul. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay, so
do you want to try to change?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so the most important point is originality of your research. Your research need to be original. Your research need to be unique, and you need to highlight uniqueness and originality of your research. It is very important because many people, they do research, but many of them do recycled and repeat research. So what is important is before you venture into a research paper, discuss, brainstorm, or think about what is original, what is new, and what is novel in your research. This is important, and try to bring some novelty into your research instead of doing a recycled paper and instead of doing a repeat paper. This is important. So uniqueness, and then similarity is also important. You have to also check similarity of your paper. It is important. Similarity or plagiarism. Plagiarism is based on similarity, and many journals, including our journal or several other journals, get plagiarized papers from all over the world. Sometimes even people working at well-known universities submit plagiarized papers. So all these happens because of whatever reasons. Even recently, there was a case about a professor from Harvard University who was also got into a plagiarized submission. Sometimes PhD students write plagiarized papers and then professors join them without checking similarity. That creates trouble for the co-authors also. And the next point is recent papers. Your paper need to have references from recent papers. It is important. It should not be just based on outdated papers. And your paper should look current. And ideally, you should select a topic which is current or contemporary. It is important. And robustness checks. Next point is robustness checks. Robustness check is important. Sometimes people do research, people write research articles, but they forget to do robustness checks. For example, if you have time series data, you should do multicollinearity. Very simple, but you should think about it. And get it English edited and proofread by someone else. This is important because many times what happens, papers are rejected, research articles are rejected because of language problems. And it is very important to make sure that you refine your paper like a diamond. Your research paper need to be refined like a diamond before you submit anywhere. It is very important and critical. Otherwise, rejection is guaranteed, not acceptance. And the
Sorry
next
to
point, yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, sir. So I'm getting a lot of messages from audience. They wanted to see your slides. So if you can just mail me, I'll quickly share it from my end.
Yeah, so now we can make it interactive also because we are already 30-minute loss. I have to give enough time for questions, right? And
Yeah.
I do not feel like to give this PPT
Okay.
to because people just use it for their own training as resource
No,
persons.
no problem, sir. Okay, sir. Then it's up to you. Yeah, you can continue. No problem.
Yeah, but I'm publishing an article on this topic next week. I will send that article. You can share with everybody. Okay.
Sure.
So, yeah, if you have an empirical paper, what is important is hypothesis. You need to derive hypothesis in an empirical paper. And if you have a qualitative paper, you need to have research questions. And if you have a conceptual paper, you need to have theoretical or testable propositions. So what I would like to repeat, what I would like to emphasize is that if you have a conceptual paper, you should have theoretical or testable propositions in your conceptual paper. If you have a qualitative paper, you should have research questions to bring rigor. If you have an empirical paper, you should derive hypotheses. These are important things. And then the next point is writing discussion section. Discussion section, writing discussion section is an art. Ideally, you should compare and contrast your findings with the findings of previously published studies in the discussion section. If you do that way, your article will look robust. Article will be more meaningful and insightful and interesting. Then the next point is revision. Journals accept an article only after revision. So if you get revision from a journal, make sure that you revise the paper with a lot of interest, enthusiasm, and energy, and implement all the comments. If you do not revise the paper based on the comments you receive from the editors and reviewers, your paper will get rejected after revision. So make sure that your paper, you revise it based on all the comments. It's very important. And the next point is select a topic with newness and novelty and avoid recycled topics that have been already researched for last 500 years. And the next point is, next do conceptual, analytical, and presentation dimension. I'm not sure how many of your faculty members, that's a question I was asking Varsha, because if majority of the students are there, I would have preferred a subject topic rather than a research topic. I see a lot of students. So focus on conceptual, analytical, and presentation dimension. This is important. If it's a research paper, you should have focus on conceptual, analytical, and presentation dimensions. Conceptual, analytical, and presentation dimension. It is important. Conceptual contribution. What is the conceptual takeaway or insights about or from your paper? For example, you are writing a paper on service quality in hotels, or service quality in restaurants. What concept or what is the conceptual dimension, or what is the conceptual clarity that brings in this paper? This is important. An analytical dimension and presentation dimension. Analytical dimension is also important. Presentation dimension is also important. Sometimes many people write and use others' property. This is a problem in research. Like, for example, I published a couple of guiding articles on art of writing, literature review, SPAR for SLR and those kind of articles. And I found that someone from Malaysia, someone from NIT Jaipur, and someone from US, they had a very similar article, heavily copying my ideas from my papers and published another paper within 1 year in another journal. So this is a common problem. So this is a common problem in industry too. For example, Bisleri came out with a water brand, and then another company was there to clone or imitate, and they introduced another very similar water brand called Bismilleri. And in the detergent and washing, in the cleaning liquid segment in the US, there are two similar brands, Clorox and Cloro. Clorox is the original brand, and this is a liquid for clean the floor. And then another company came out with a similar brand called Cloro. So that is a kind of duplicate brand, but like a cloned or imitating brand. This is a serious problem in research too. Like, you have an idea, you come out with an original or novel paper, and others are very clever. They will not copy directly, but they will just take your ideas and they will rewrite and paraphrase. These days, ChatGPT can rewrite it. It's very easy to write an article with the help of ChatGPT, borrowing others' ideas. You will not be caught as well, because you are not actually copying the same sentences. If you not copy same sentences, you will not be caught for similarity or plagiarism. But this is a serious challenge. It is actually kind of intellectual property violation, but it is very, very difficult to catch those kind of people, those who violate the legal issues. And people, those who publish, they get so much awards and those kind of things also. So clever people win in research. And I've seen the person from India who copied my article, but did not exactly copy every sentence. He got an award, he became IIM professor, all this kind of things, you know what I'm trying to say. All this happens. So, but I'm trying to discourage. That's what I'm talking about, without mentioning people's names. So conceptual, analytical, and presentation dimension, these are important, but people also need to practice ethical, do the research based on ethics. It's important. Otherwise, it's not a good idea to do things. And don'ts, what are the don'ts? What don'ts you should keep in mind? Regional, local, national. Your references shows your standard. Do not cite from local journals. Do not cite from national journals if you want to publish in international journals, because your references should come from international journals. That shows your standard, that shows your awareness of the journals, that shows the rigorous process. And citation from the websites, avoid citation from the website. Maximum, if you cite from website, maximum should be 1 or 2. And your title need to be precise and generalized. Don't include your country or state or district or city name in your title, because you need to have a generalized title if you want to submit to an international journal. Otherwise, national journals you can publish. And the next point is, no need to spend a lot of time to change reference format. If one journal rejects your paper, you can submit to next journal. 80% of the journal editors do not care the format, as most of them have implemented free format policy. And the next point is, do not submit to slow journals. Yeah, so there are some publishing companies which are very slow. You have to identify them. And some of them take 6 months or even 8 months from the date of acceptance to publishing an article. Some of them take 2 months. On the other hand, Wiley or Elsevier, Springer, Taylor and Francis, they take only 2 weeks to publish an article after acceptance. So this is another point. And I repeat, do not defend yourself if you get a revision. And do not research with recycled topics, recycled theories, recycled methods. You have to always bring newness and novelty. I do have so many questions, but I wish, as I mentioned to Professor Varsha before, I would prefer to have this as an interactive session. And interactive session simply means that one person can ask very precise and quick questions, and I would be very happy to answer your questions because many of you have different doubts, but you need to formulate your questions like a very quick question, precise, concise, and to the point question, and one person maximum one question so that I can take up many questions. Thank you.
So, okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So we have a lot of questions which we have gathered in our Q&A box, and this is the webinar. And the students you can see here are our organizing committee, and of our audience who comprises majority of the faculty members are in the attendees. So they have sent a lot of questions in our Q&A box. With your permission, I will take few of those.
Yes.
Yes, sir. So the first question comes from our PhD scholar, Divya Jetli. She asked this question that if the topic is comparatively new, in that case, they are not able to find much of the reference to the literature review for this thing. So what should they do in that case? How do they proceed further with their research?
Yeah, so it's a very important question. However, the chances of publication is high. The probability of acceptance is high when you work on new topics. References, of course, people start doing research on new topics, and references will come up in about 3 months or 6 months time, or almost every topic. So you would be able to get some references. And like I was the second one to publish an article on ChatGPT. And when I worked with Akiko and Charles from London, we did not have many references, but we sourced from some newspapers or some websites, and but we managed to. But we also found some references in another domain. But of course, it is a challenge. But you don't have to be the very first writer of an article on the topic, but you should not be a late player. If you are second, third, fourth, fifth, or 10th, you have more probability of acceptance. My suggestion was to increase the acceptance probability.
Thank you, sir.
But you can find in good references from different sources. It need not come from very top journal in case if you are the first or second one to write an article.
Certainly. Next question comes from Professor Shri Murthy. He asks, can you guide us with some useful tools which we can check the robustness of the article or the similarity index? We know all that Turnitin is there to check that. But how do we check the robustness of the article?
Robustness check includes, suppose if you have a cross-section database study, you should do, for example, you should do common method bias test. So Herman has test, and there are a couple of other tests. This is for cross-section data analysis. And we have also, I would suggest that you should go for experimental studies because, again, journals are looking for something new. Structural equation modeling is already used in something like 5 million studies or 3 million studies. It has no newness at all now. So like regression, multiple regression is already outdated 10 years ago. Structural equation modeling is already outdated for, last 10 years, people published millions of articles using structural equation modeling. It has no newness. So you should think about mixed method studies. You should think about experimental studies and all those kind of things if you are doing data analysis. So that is important.
Next question is from Professor Mohini. She asked that how do we deal with the research methodology part of a conceptual paper?
Yeah, conceptual paper need to be rigorous, and conceptual papers are developed based on literature review. You should be able to develop an original framework or original model in a conceptual paper. It is very important. For example, I developed a conceptual framework called 7P framework for international marketing. This is purely based on literature review. 7P framework for international marketing is based on a formula. Performance in a foreign market is a function of 6 other P's. It's a function of your company's potential in a foreign market, your company's path, your company's processes, your company's pace, your company's pattern, and that result into performance in a foreign market. That is the equation. Sure. you should be able to develop something new, some new model, new framework, or contribute towards new theory based on your conceptual paper.
Thank you so much, sir. Next question is from Professor Jayasankara Prasad. He asked that how do we develop or achieve empirical rigor and parsimony in our research?
Empirical rigor, that's why, yeah. So I would like to give you a tip. For example, you can have multiple studies in the same paper and classify them as study 1, study 2, study 3. For example, if you follow experimental design, you can conduct 3 experiments in the same paper, and experiment 1 is classified as study 1, experiment 2 is classified as study 2, experiment 3 is classified as study 3 in the same paper. Otherwise, if you're not good in experimental design, you can do 1 qualitative study leading to study 2 quantitative study. Or 1 qualitative and then study 2 and study 3 using 2 different empirical methods, so that you have 3 studies in the same paper. That kind of papers have high probability of acceptance these days.
There's a humorous question actually, and I request you to answer that. One of the professor, Shraddha Pal, asked this. What's the problem with using ChatGPT?
There is no problem in using ChatGPT. You can use ChatGPT to improve your English language, and let's say you write your paper and ask ChatGPT to improve your English language, and it's absolutely okay. The only thing is that if you directly copy and paste 1,000 words from ChatGPT and claim that this is your article, then it could be a problem, because some similarity softwares catch if you do that. But you can source. If you write an article and ask ChatGPT to improve English language, there's absolutely no problem.
Another question is there any specific ideal time across these 12 months, any specific month which you feel the ideal time for submission of research papers, where you feel that's the particular month when if you submit your paper, the process goes faster? Something like that exists?
Nothing like that, but journals, some of the journal editors would like to publish papers from January to August, because September to December, they want to publish less number of papers. So which cannot be correlated with the date, the time of submissions. But ideally, I would believe that if you submit from April to September or April to October, it is better. But there is no rule like that when you can submit. But the best way to get acceptance is a tip for you is to identify special issues, because the special issues launched by some journals, not all journals have special issues. Some top journals have no special issue, but many journals have special issues. So acceptance rate in special issue is very high. Some of the special issues have 40% acceptance rate, but acceptance rate in a regular issue is very low. Acceptance rate in a regular issue in some journals is 5%, some journals is 4%. So if you identify special issue and write for special issues, you can increase the probability of acceptance. And there are many authors who only target special issues and they get acceptance. So that is a easy way to publish. I don't know why some journals launch many special issues, but special issues have very high acceptance rates.
And do you predict any kind of risk of retraction when a lot of special issues are coming from one journal?
Special issues have no link with retraction. But some editors are fascinated about certain things. Some human beings are passionate about like some institutions have fingerprinting and finger punching. Some institutions do not have. So all these are depending upon the leaders. So some editors are passionate about something, so because they are used to that. So it's all, or some of them want to create their own circle by helping the dear and near and all this kind of thing. There are so many factors.
Yeah. Correct. Would you like to suggest any specific tools or techniques for those who are writing review-based papers?
Tools, I mean, softwares and those kind of things are coming up, and But review papers are different types. There are about 10 types of review papers: domain-based review, method-based review, theory-based review. Domain-based review itself can be classified further into 8, 9 different types. So conceptual review, there is no software, but yeah, so the field is still developing. So bibliometric review, there are softwares, but other type of meta-analytic review, CMS software is good, comprehensive meta-analysis. So depending upon what type of review paper that you are writing.
Sure, sir. One last question I would like to ask here is that what's the simplest way to identify predatory journals?
Okay, so ideally, I would say that suppose if you do not have enough exposure and experience, you should look at who is publishing this journal. So the leading publishers do not publish predatory journals. And which are the leading publishers? Elsevier, Wiley, Taylor and Francis, Springer, and Sage. They are the leading publishers. These 5 never publish any predatory journals. I'm 100% sure. So, yeah. So in case if the publisher is unknown, then you have to double check with the journal, what kind of journal is this?
Yes, thank you so much, sir. So we have taken various questions and few were repetitive, so I would not like to repeat those. Thank you so much for such an enlightful session and giving your thoughts about high quality publishing, giving the tips to our PhD scholars, students, faculty who have joined us from various countries regarding how do we approach writing research and how do we publish, how do we go about acceptance and using different methodologies, using different kind of papers, whether it is empirical, whether it is review based, or whether it is high quality analysis. So thank you so much, sir, for joining us for this particular summit. Any message you have for our audience?
Thank you for this invitation, and I'm sure that some of you might have found some information useful. And in case if you need some classic papers on different methodologies, if you send me an email, I'll be happy to send it to you. Suppose if you want a classic paper that uses experimental design, or if you want different type of classic review articles, I can send you a copy of. If you send me an email, feel free to send me an email. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. You can send me a message on LinkedIn also. I can send a file on LinkedIn to you as well. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Justin Paul. It was indeed a pleasure listening in, and I'm sure it added a lot of value to a lot of our participants who've tuned in live. And also heartfelt gratitude to on behalf of Atlas Skilltech University and the entire team here. And we do look forward to collaborating with you in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry for the technical problem. It just happened.
No problem, sir.
No problems at all. All right.
I hope Dr. Tapish has joined us.
Yes.
Dr. Tapish. Yeah, we'll just wait for a second for him to join, and then we'll start with the next session.
Yes, so we are just about to move on to the second part of today's session. While we wait for Dr. Tapish, Dr. Varsha, do you want to just confirm if...
Yes, we'll just take a minute and then we'll start with the next session.
Sure.
We are good to go now.
Perfect. All right, so we move on to the second leg of today's session. We have Dr. Tapish Panwar with us, who also leads the Faculty of Marketing here at Atlas Skilltech University. and also champions a lot of different things at the university, and one of them being the MBA curriculum. And we have been working very closely on creating cutting edge curriculum here at Atlas. With this, over to you, Dr. Tapish, to formally introduce Professor Dr. Sudarshan to everyone who's been tuned in today. Over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Aditya. It's my honor to introduce our distinguished keynote speaker today at AAROHAN 2.0, Professor R. Sudarshan. Professor Sudarshan has had a distinguished career in the domains of research, development programming, and governance. After he obtained a master's degree in the economics from the Delhi School of Economics, he was elected to the Rhodes Scholarship. He joined Balliol College, University of Oxford, and obtained a master's degree in politics in 1977. He was also elected to a research fellowship in St. John's College, University of Cambridge, where he studied judicial review of economic legislation by the Supreme Court of India, specializing in the interface of law and economics. In 1983, he was a visiting scholar in the School of International Development, University of East Anglia. In 1984, he served in the Ford Foundation South Asia office in New Delhi as an assistant representative and program officer for human rights and social justice. Further, in 1991, he joined the UNDP in India as senior economist and assistant representative for governance and public policy. In 2000, he served UNDP in Jakarta as a senior governance advisor. In 2002, he was appointed policy advisor for justice and governance in UNDP Oslo Governance Center. In 2005, he was sent to the UNDP Asia Pacific Center in Bangkok, where he was regional policy advisor for governance, human rights, rule of law, justice, and legal reforms. In 2012, he joined the O.P. Jindal Global University, which is an institution of eminence and deemed to be university, as the founding dean of the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy. He has an impressive track record of publications comprising books, articles, and UN policy reports, reflecting his interdisciplinary research, teaching, and policy experience in development program, human development, law, governance, institution, and policy. Sir, it is a pleasure to have you today with us as a keynote address.
Well, thank you very much for that elaborate introduction. You know, when I was a student in Delhi School of Economics, there was the Dorab Tata Memorial Lecture in Delhi that was presided over by the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. And the chief guest was Sir Arthur Lewis, a famous economist who got the Nobel Prize. And one of his theories is about the dual economy. So Arthur Lewis is from the West Indies, and he was introduced by J.R.D. Tata, nonetheless. So, who introduced him somewhat elaborately as, the Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Vice President of the World Bank, Fellow at the Woodrow Wilson School, Stanley Jevons Professor of Economics at the University of Manchester. Long list of achievements. And Arthur Lewis got up and said that it reminded him of a conversation between a general and a young lady sitting next to him in a banquet. And the general was wearing rows and rows of medals. And the lady said to the general, "General, you must be a very great man. You've got all these medals." And the general said, "Well, actually, I've got all these medals because I got this one first." And she said, "Now, how did you get that medal?" And he said, "Well, that one I got by accident." He's a humble man, modest man. So in a way, you see, many things follow. If you have one break, it's a fact of life. So in my case, getting a Rhodes Scholarship made a difference. I mean, the moment, people sort of value that scholarship, it's a scholarship for studying in a university, like any other, but it's got this halo about it. And then many doors open to you. So, and then you're at Oxford, and then once you're at Oxford, then you can get a research fellowship at Cambridge. Everything follows, one achievement. So I would say to, I've never addressed on Zoom more than 500 people in any occasion. And so all of them must be, connected to Atlas Skilltech University or students. I must say that joining the Atlas Skill Tech University is going to be your break. It's like the Rhodes Scholarship in my case. Many doors will open to you, and there'll be all kinds of achievements that are possible. Now, the topic that's given to me today is the role of universities in the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals, also to some extent environmental, social, and governance, which are objectives that the private sector is supposed to follow. And so I think I'll try to address that, but I was very interested in listening to the previous speaker and his comments about what people do when they try to publish articles in prestigious journals. They try to, steal other people's ideas and try to project them as if they have some element of originality. And he was citing some of his own papers that have been similarly taken up. And so the first thing I want to say, addressing students, is that the conference is titled AAROHAN, and AAROHAN actually means ascending. There was a lovely line in Kumara Sambhava, which went something like Arohanartham Navayuvena Kamasya Stopanamiyam Prayuktam. That is, that the young use the ladder of desire to ascend. That's in a classic work in Sanskrit. So ascend. And I would like to emphasize that the first thing about this kind of ascent is having strong ethical foundations. If you did that, faculty and students wouldn't have to, you wouldn't get a situation where people are trying to steal other people's ideas and passing themselves as their own. So in a university context, it matters a great deal to understand that there are two kinds of excellences. One is, you might call, external excellence or recognition or award. And another is internal, your own internal standards of excellence. This distinction, I think, is very important for us before we understand what the universities might do in a global context to help achieve the SDGs. I'll come back to that in a minute. But I want to elaborate on this. So let me illustrate what I'm trying to say by asking you to imagine that, you want to encourage a child to play the game of chess. That requires sitting down and concentrating, and children find it very difficult to sit down and concentrate and do one thing. They like to run around and so on. So you tell the child, if you sit down and play a game of chess, I'll teach you the game. I'll give you a chocolate as a reward. And the child thinks, oh, well, might as well get the chocolate. So it starts playing with you. And then it's learning the game, but it's focused on the chocolate at the end of the game. And then you tell the child, well, actually, we'll give you 2 chocolates. If you beat me, I'll try to play in a way that is not too difficult. But if you beat me, you'll get 2 chocolates. And then the child is alerted to, now, what can I do to cheat, to beat this man? And so it creates a temptation to cheat, right? So when you have an external reward, like publishing in an international journal, which will give you recognition, promotions, and in some universities, you will get a monetary incentive. The temptation to kind of cheat, as in the child learning chess, is strong. You want to quickly publish as many articles as possible in international journals. You get add to your normal compensation in a university. That actually happens. That's because you're focused on the external standards of excellence. But what happens to the child is that it will attempt to cheat, but if it sticks with playing the game, at some point the child will learn to love the game. The game itself will take over the child. So chess is a beautiful game. You will reach a point where you admire the move that your opponent makes because it's brilliant. You don't think, no, it's going to make me lose. You just admire people who've done that in the past. You admire the grandmasters. You admire the way they, handle the game. And then you develop what you might call internal standards of excellence. So the child learning chess will continue to play the game for the love of chess, not for some chocolate, right? And this is what we need to get at. In whatever we do, we must set up internal standards of excellence and try to enjoy and love what we are doing for its own sake. So if you're teaching, the fact that you're imparting knowledge, students are bright and their eyes light up when you teach them something, that is your reward. Now, whether you get promoted or whether you get a salary increment on performance appraisal and whether you publish articles in research journals is secondary. The primary thing is to, firstly, to develop internal standards of excellence and cultivate these internal goods, because you won't know the value of this until you engage in the activity. Until the child learns to play chess and plays chess long enough to admire the beauty of the game. It could be, you could take anything. Teaching is like that. Or you could take the game of cricket. The top players, the beautiful players in the game, don't do it because they're going to get big prize money. They play the game for the love of the game. Ranjit Singh Ji invented strokes in cricket, which absolutely marveled the British in England. They called it Oriental magic. He invented a stroke called the late cut. He invented a stroke called the leg lance. These are gentle, delicate strokes, but winning strokes. The ball goes to the boundary. He did it for the love of the game, not because somebody was going to give him some prize at the end of it. So this is the first point I want to emphasize. Your AAROHAN must be, the foundation for it must be internal goods, internal standards of excellence in what you do. So you must benchmark yourself against yourself. You benchmark yourself and say, I want to do better than I did last year or last month. It's all right for these ranking agencies to provide ranking and say benchmark yourself against the Ivy League universities in the United States, become world class and so on. They do this and that and the other, and that's your goal. But I think that is all focusing on external goods. And for all of us, we need to focus on our internal goods and internal standards of excellence. So as the first point, that the thought that occurred to me when I heard Professor Justin Paul talk about how people try to take shortcuts and are unethical. They are doing research without the joy of research. They are doing research because if they get the article published, they'll get some reward for it. That's an external reward. But you should research for the love of the research. That should be its own reward. The other things are incidental. They'll come along anyway. You don't have to focus on them. You want to focus on your own internal standards of excellence, your own enjoyment of what you do. So having said that, I'd say that universities have a very critical role in the SDGs. I've been particularly personally involved in the development of the SDGs. I was in the UNDP, and initially in the year 2000, UNDP started with the Millennium Development Goals. In the year 2000, which is the turn of the millennium, the member countries of the UN adopted a resolution saying they would focus on peace, of course, in which the UN doesn't do very well, peace and conflict. They would focus on development, and they would focus on human rights and democracy. And then this general objective in the Millennium Declaration of the UN had to be translated into action. And so all the UN bureaucracies got together and, as a bureaucratic exercise, formulated 8 Millennium Development Goals. They were inspired because the one head of UNICEF, James Grant, when he became the head of UNICEF, he asked himself, what do I do as the head of UNICEF, right? What I can do is, of course, if I go to a country, the prime minister or the president will give me an appointment because I'm heading a UN agency. After that, what do I do? So he decided that every time he visited a country, he will ask the head of the government or the head of state, make me one promise. I'll come back in 3 years' time. Promise me that when I come back, all the children in your country will be immunized against the diseases for which we have vaccines, smallpox, polio, whatever. And it worked very well. Whether a country was a democracy, dictatorship, whatever kind of country, James Grant, with this, make me one promise, one goal, deliver on that, worked very well. And the UN bureaucracy thought, oh, this is a good strategy. Let's have goals and targets, and let's tell the governments, focus on this, and you will achieve your goal. But so the one goal of immunization became 8 goals in the Millennium Development Program. Okay, but states and governments were not too excited about it. India, for instance, for a long time said, what are these Millennium Development Goals? We never signed up to them. We signed up to the Millennium Declaration, yes. But you UN agencies, you UN bureaucrats come along and tell us, these are the goals and we should focus on them. So there was a lukewarm reception to the Millennium Development Goals, and the UN learned a lesson. And the lesson was that if you want to do this kind of thing, you must have much more buy-in. You must have more consultations. You must involve civil society. You must involve NGOs. And therefore, they went about formulating the Sustainable Development Goals in a highly consultative way. There was a high-level panel, which was then chaired by David Cameron, who was then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono was the President of Indonesia. It had many members, and they went to different countries in the world, held consultations and so on. And of course, if you involve a lot of people and ask them, what do you think is important and good? And everybody was conscious about climate change and the importance of the environment and what's happening to the planet, which was an afterthought in the case of the MDGs. They had not initially thought of environment at that time, but in the SDGs, more people understood the importance. And so once you have many people and you ask them what's important, you will get many answers as to what's important. So we ended up with 17 goals and a whole set of targets and indicators for them. But the plus side is that they have the legitimacy and acceptance of all the member states of the United Nations. But of course, translating that into action is another matter. Firstly, you need a lot of resources for it, and the rich countries are not willing to spare as many resources that's needed. They seem to be more ready to spare resources to finance one country in the Russia-Ukraine war. They seem to be ready to finance other things, particularly military-oriented expenditure, but they seem to be somewhat reluctant to finance the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so this is where the universities and their role becomes very important. Firstly, we must hold, universities have the ability to do research and to investigate empirically what is actually happening with respect to each of the goals in each of the countries and in each of the sub-localities in the country and in each locality. What happening to the 17 goals in each locality? So if you took my university, it is located in Sonipat. It's surrounded by agricultural fields. There are farmers all around. And so an obligation for our university would be to see what is happening to the Sustainable Development Goals in our hinterland. Our students should be able to go out and meet the people, talk to them, and so on. And being able to talk to ordinary people, the village woman next to a university campus, students would come from somewhat privileged background.
I think he's facing some.
Yes, internet issues there. He's there. I think again he has to share the screen.
Yeah,
He'll
we
join
can
up.
wait for a bit. Yeah.
Yes, sir is there. So just unmute yourself.
Right. Yeah, I briefly lost connection because of the internet. So let me carry on here. So I was saying that we have an obligation as a university to work with people in our immediate surrounding, and students from privileged backgrounds need to learn how to communicate with ordinary people, because if you live in gated communities and have sheltered lives, and you think that all these other people without fancy education are they have nothing to teach you, you'd be very wrong. So one of the things is to appreciate that knowledge is valuable from all sources. So it's not simply the professor on the stage, acting like a sage that has knowledge. The women who do the gardening on our university campus have something to communicate. They have some knowledge. Farmers have knowledge. Ordinary workers in a factory will have knowledge. So the first thing as a university is to respect knowledge. That's the first obligation of a university, and not to think that only knowledge that is published in international journals counts as knowledge, right? Knowledge is to be acquired from multiple sources, and the way to do it is by communication. And so a first obligation of a university, if it wants to contribute to the advancement of the SDGs, is to first, in a way, democratize knowledge, and not to think that some kind of knowledge is more privileged. And if the professor is from Harvard or Oxford or Cambridge, that person's knowledge is somehow more important than the knowledge of the auto rickshaw driver with whom you can talk politics and would find that he's very knowledgeable about democratic politics. So a kind of humility and a kind of understanding that knowledge is valuable no matter from what source it comes is the first requirement in a university and students in a university. Secondly, the universities have an obligation, of course, to do research, to find ways of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals in ways that we've not been able to do till now. So innovation, discovery is important. And here I'd say that one of the problems is the division of disciplines. You see, the Atlas Skill Tech is what I like. It's not called it doesn't have departments of economics and politics and sociology. It says Skill Tech. And that's important because if you say, oh, I'm an economist and all I know is economics, or I'm a political scientist and all I know is political science, you'd be like the blind men who touched different parts of the elephant and described what the elephant was like. The one who held the tail said, the elephant is like a rope. And another one which touched the legs of the elephant said, oh, the elephant is like, a pillar in a big building. Or someone who touched the fan, the ears might say it's like a fan. you have a partial understanding, you don't get the whole picture. And the important thing is to get the whole picture. And in order to get the whole picture, you must be interdisciplinary. You must get insights from multiple disciplines. If you want to solve sustainable development goals, achieve them, they are not, limited to knowledge only from economics or knowledge only from anthropology or knowledge only from statistics. You need to have a very, very interdisciplinary approach to solving problems. And so therefore, that means you need to acquire some skills by which you can quickly get insights from multiple disciplines. And here I'd say that we must embrace artificial intelligence. We must make productive and full use of it. Because what it is, it's a very fast, sophisticated search engine that will give you references from anywhere in the world in a matter of seconds. That will take you probably days and weeks if you went to the conventional library and tried to do conventional kinds of research to find out what's been written on some subject. The artificial intelligence, the large language learning models will give you that information very quickly. But the point is, it's information. It's not knowledge. And information can become knowledge only when you apply your mind to it, right? And if you apply your mind to information and convert it into knowledge, and if you test it out and learn from experience, then you are somewhere near approaching wisdom, right? So you have these different stages from easily getting information thanks to artificial intelligence to a critical engagement with what you get in front of you as information that you convert to knowledge, and then applying that knowledge to solve some actual practical problems in the society around you. So the universities must do that. So experiential learning, getting out and meeting people who are in the business of doing things, producing things, solving problems, healing people, teaching people, defending people in courts. All of that experience is necessary. And we must somehow make universities able to provide that kind of knowledge to its students. And that's an important point. So when it comes to, so I've emphasized that, but I also think that many students are generally not very knowledgeable about the Sustainable Development Goals. Unless you include it in the curriculum, and unless you include it in the course, the learning that they do, they may graduate without having a clue that in 2015, the member states of the United Nations adopted a resolution that recognized the main challenges that the world faces and adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. And we know that halfway through the 10 years, the 2030, we have achieved less than half of the targets. So we have a long way to go. So including Sustainable Development Goals in the curriculum in some form or the other, and there are 17 goals, so you can specialize in some, say quality of education or elimination of poverty or gender equality, and include this in the curriculum. Right? That's very important for universities to do as their contribution to the world as a whole, trying to achieve these goals. Another important thing is for universities themselves to live up to the expectations of the Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, one is that energy consumption, reduction of carbon emissions. In practically all of us in our daily life can do something to contribute towards that. And so when universities design their buildings and design their infrastructure, they must be conscious of this. They must ensure that there are solar panels, that solar energy is used as a renewable energy source and reduce the dependence on fossil fuels. These are obligations. So it's not, they're both opportunities and obligations. And universities ought to do that. And there are now, even the rating agencies now give credit for sustain SDG impact of universities. The Times Higher Education has that. It assesses the impact that universities have with respect to the Sustainable Development Goals. There are about 5 universities in Australia which are generally at the top, and many universities participate in it. Some universities don't, but that doesn't mean it's not an obligation for them if they don't participate in this ranking. The ranking is simply a kind of an incentive, but I think even without that, the incentive is an external good, as I began by saying. You ought to do it because it's important in itself, regardless of whether you're going to be ranked or not ranked. It's important for every university to pay attention to what it's doing about its rate of carbon emissions and what it's doing about its consumption of fossil fuels and energies from that source. Then universities also have an obligation to educate the public. It is not simply the fee-paying students who need to be educated. The universities people are looked upon as knowledgeable, educated people, and they must be enlightened citizens and play a part in the public life of countries. I mean, your founder has been in public life, the Sheriff of Bombay City, Mumbai. That's the kind of obligation that university members, students, faculty, staff, all of them ought to take an interest in public life and try to make a difference in that, and not to be indifferent and say, well, I mean, that's somebody else's business, not my business. Public life, all this is all about politics, and politics is for scoundrels, and I don't like it. Now, that kind of cynicism is very damaging to democracy. It will undermine our achievements of the Sustainable Development Goals. We have to banish cynicism and play a constructive role. If you think politics is overly dominated by people of a dubious character, then people of high moral character ought to enter into politics. You can't have it both ways. You can't just say, oh, it's not my business, and then be cynical and condemn the politicians that we do have. So public education, a public obligation, enlightening the public, educating citizens about, which set of policies are good and which set of policies are bad, by speaking at fora, by writing op-eds in newspapers, is important. Not get onto television and shout at each other in a meaningless way that we witness for the most part in this country now. It's pathetic. That's not educating the public. So universities have an obligation to find ways and means of genuinely educating the public about issues as to the pros and cons of different sets of policies. And universities also have an obligation to make their learning and knowledge more applied. I'm not saying that that's the only thing universities should do. There are two kinds of knowledge. There is knowledge that is fundamental. Much of the knowledge that, say, physics has, which helps us understand the universe and black holes and quantum particles, is very basic. You don't know what good will it do. Will it feed a hungry child? No, it won't. But it's important knowledge. And it's knowledge for its own sake that universities must develop, because you never know when that knowledge will have an application, right? For instance, why send a person to the moon? What good will it do to people living on Earth? But the knowledge that enables you to send somebody to the moon can have practical consequences. And for instance, the NASA, which is the space agency of the United States, has commercialized a number of things that enabled it, that was needed for its Apollo and other programs. Whereas some other countries like the Soviet Union also did the same thing, but they did not publicize that knowledge. They said it's a military secret and we will not share it with anybody. Whereas in the United States, being a more open society, the discoveries that were made in the course of the space program were commercialized. And one of the important consequences of that is the internet. And the internet is a public good. It wasn't invented, it was invented for military purposes to begin with. But now it's a public good and we are all benefiting from it right now as I'm speaking, right? So we need to understand that knowledge for its own sake is important, fundamental knowledge. But then there's also knowledge that has an instrumental value and that can be actually applied, has practical applications, whether it's economics or sociology or anthropology. And the important thing about public policy, which affects all of us, is that it has to draw insights from multiple disciplines. So if I may, to illustrate the point I'm making about the importance of multiple disciplines, let me take the example of the COVID-19. And when it was discovered, the WHO declared it to be a pandemic, which means it's worldwide and it's highly contagious. The epidemiologists who study the history of diseases, how do diseases spread and what is their impact on society, that's epidemiology. Their advice to policymakers was minimize interpersonal human contact because the virus spreads from person to person. And if those with COVID quarantine themselves, don't interact with other people, the chances of this virus spreading is going to be minimized. But that's one discipline, epidemiology, and advice from one discipline. Most governments took that advice and decided that they will order a lockdown, ask people to quarantine. And India, even though there were only a handful of cases in Mumbai and Bengaluru, declared a nationwide lockdown. Thought we are being very smart doing that. Now, if you had a sense of history, you would know that when the plague hit Mumbai, at that time, the authorities, the administration in Mumbai, laid on additional buses and additional trains and told people, get out of the city if you can. We must decongest the city because plague is contagious. And if you go away, far away from the city, you're likely to escape the plague. We forgot that lesson. Demography is the study of populations and where are people, what are they doing, what is the fertility rate of growth of populations and so on. That's a discipline. Now, if a demographer had been consulted, they would have told our policymakers, saying stay at home is meaningless for millions of people because they are not at home. They are migrant workers working in far-off places, and they are working in factories and construction sites. And factories and construction sites have stopped work, so they have no work, and they are stuck somewhere far away from their families. And so demographers would have said, first deal with these people. Let them get home before you lock down. Lay on additional buses and transport. Didn't do that. We didn't do that. Then psychology would tell you that when you're confronted with a deadly disease like COVID, which killed many people, you want to be with your family. What will the migrant worker do? The migrant worker, he or she, wants to be with their family. That's a natural psychological impulse, but you shut down all transport. So what do? They walk, and we witness people. So our lockdown is an example of bad public policy, ill-informed by multiple disciplines and solely informed by epidemiology, which is a good discipline. But if you only rely on knowledge from the one discipline, you will get it wrong. So we witnessed people walking on the roads. We witnessed people, clamoring for oxygen. It was disastrous. No matter what other viewpoint anybody may wish to put in retrospect, that we manufactured the vaccines, we donated vaccines for other countries and so on, all well and good. But the initial lockdown was hasty and bad public policy because it was not informed by insights of history, demography, psychology, anthropology, cultures, and economics, of course. So therefore, I'd say universities have like what I'm doing now is what a university should do. It should examine a policy and say, what is wrong with it? So that we don't repeat the mistakes that we made in the past. So research in a university is all about examining and evaluating what is the effectiveness of a policy. There's no point in saying, since intelligent people have formulated the policy, by definition, the policy must be good. The policy cannot be good until it achieves its result. And therefore, that's another major obligation of the universities to evaluate the impact of policies on the SDGs locally, nationally, and globally. It's possible to do that kind of research. And that would be original research. That would be the kind of research that international journals edited by Justin Paul would be very happy to publish. And it would also inform policymakers as to where they are going wrong and where they can correct themselves. So we have multiple roles in the university. One is to cultivate an internal sense of excellence and cultivate a standard of ethics so that we do whatever we do well and we enjoy what we do and not do it for the sake of some external reward. Then we must produce knowledge that has a bearing on the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. We must hold government accountable by evaluating and critiquing what is done by governments in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We have an obligation to learn from ordinary people, from the general public, and value their knowledge as much as the knowledge that's derived from lofty books and journal articles published by scholars. And we have an obligation to educate the public by communicating with them in language they can understand. See, academics have a tendency to write in a language that only academics can read or understand. When you publish in an international journal, Justin Paul and his editors will read it, of course. Then about 6 or 7 people will read it. And that's the end of it. Nobody else will read it. So if you're going to, as a university, make a difference to society, you must communicate what you know in language and in languages that the ordinary person, picking up a newspaper can read and understand. So that's a moral obligation to educate the public. And then to come up with holding governments accountable, I already mentioned, and then to come up with solutions. I mean, for instance, there are many techniques, we borrow a technique from pharmacology, the medicine, to test the efficacy of drugs. In the same way, we can test the efficacy of certain initiatives. Is giving cash transfer better than giving grains, wheat and rice and oil, which would be more effective in improving the well-being of people? That's important. We can do experiments to figure out what works. We can do experiments to figure out what works where, because these solutions cannot be generalized and applicable for everybody. At one point, USAID distributed a lot of surplus milk powder to people in Latin America, thinking this is damn good because it's nutritious, it has vitamins and so on, forgetting that people in Latin America are highly lactose intolerant. And you send them tons and tons of milk powder, what would they do with it? Actually, they used it to coat their cottages as a kind of whitewash layer instead of consuming it, because they would be sick if they consumed milk powder. But that knowledge is what universities ought to communicate to policymakers. So the officials in USAID don't do something stupid like sending milk powder to a lactose intolerant population. So these are the obligations of the university with respect to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And we may say, do this and do that. We've experimented it. We found it works. We know what the failures are. We must learn lessons from failures. And then most importantly, we must put our own house in order. We must, there is a saying that is said of doctors who give you advice. The saying is, physician, heal thyself. A doctor who's addicted to tobacco may advise his patients stop smoking, but it's much better if the doctor first stops smoking himself or herself and then give the advice to others to stop smoking. So we have an obligation on our campuses to do what we can towards the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'll stop there and would be happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So with your permission, we would like to take few questions which our participants have sent in our Q&A box. Yeah. So the first question is, which are the SDGs applicable to save agricultural production?
Well, I mean, the SDGs pertaining to poverty and nutrition are important because agriculture is, produces food, but the major problem that we have is not so much the availability of food, but nutrition. Even in very well-off families in India, there's malnourishment because they're eating the wrong kinds of food. And so one of the goals is to, and the indicators are to reduction in improvement in nutrition. And therefore, that means that in our agricultural practices, we have to adopt policies that enable the production of nutritious food. Right now, our agricultural policy encourages the production of wheat and rice and provides farmers with a minimum guaranteed price, the minimum support price, and the farmers now want it to be guaranteed by law, not simply provided by an executive decision of the government of the day. And this is unhelpful, encouraging a population that once lived on jowar, bajra, ragi. All the peasants in India ate that, but because they got subsidized wheat and rice, they switched over to that because thinking it's a more superior lifestyle to be eating rice, and then end up with a high incidence of diabetes. And India is the diabetes capital of the world. That's because of this. So we need to look at our policies and focus on that. So agricultural production, we must subsidize the production of millets. Right now, the Prime Minister is propagating millets, and millets are very expensive because such a small quantity is produced that if you want to buy millets, you have to pay a higher price than you would pay for wheat and rice. So which poor person is going to buy millets at the rate at which it is now sold, right? So we need to, this is a big challenge in agriculture. And therefore, the main goal, you have to ask, what is the end goal, right? And many of the food is a means to a healthy lifestyle. It's a means. It's not an end in itself. You don't live to eat. You eat in order to live. And if you want to live well, you must eat well, and you must eat the things that are affordable and that our policies enable a higher production, right? Organic farming is good, but then organic goods are all super priced. Ordinary people can't afford them. So these are big problems in agriculture that we must address, and they are part of the vision of the Sustainable Development Goals. Always ask, what is the teleology? What is the purpose? What are you aiming at? So agriculture is a means. The end result is good diet for cattle, living beings, and human beings.
Thank you so much, sir, for detailed answer and making us understand the benefits of eating healthy as well, which is again cost effective. Yeah, so I would like to take another question. Dr. Srimurthy asked this question. Which are the institutions would you like to suggest where we can send our staff or faculties where they can be enlightened towards sustainable development, or where students can develop that kind of unique skill set? Any kind of boards, universities, any websites which you would like to refer?
Yeah, I think it's easy to find that. There is an association of universities for sustainable development, ASD, I think it's called. Education for sustainable development is an important part. There's a part of the United Nations called UNITAR, which is in Geneva, that has a number of programs, MOOC programs, online programs on different sustainable development goals and what they can achieve. There's something called the universities network or universities center. The acronym is UGC, but it's not our UGC. It's an international association of universities. So there are many toolkits that help universities and their administrators to learn about what to do inside the campus and what to do in terms of their obligations to society outside the campus. So it's plenty. I mean, you can just, this question, if it is posted on Chat GPT, would give you excellent answers that you could follow up.
Surely, sir. The another question, as you mentioned, Chat GPT, the next question comes, which is related to AI. So this is from Professor Sunita, who asked this question that AI will definitely ease in the jobs and is highly beneficial. But do you think that with the ease of these and benefits of AI, people will start overlooking on sustainable practices? Do you see any kind of relevance?
See, AI can never substitute for human intelligence and human judgment. At the end of it, it's a machine. It's a very fast and super search engine. We've got used to search engines, but this is a very sophisticated large language search engine. That's what it is. And you can learn how to, frame your question or your prompts so that you get more accurate answers. AI can also deceive you, right? It has what we call hallucinations of AI. So if you ask them a question, if you say, I want a learned article on SDGs, in order to make its output look learned, it will invent citations that actually don't exist. It will invent references to journals that don't exist, right? So it looks, well referenced and well journal. And you want to use your practical judgment to say, am I going to believe this or not? So AI can never substitute for human intelligence. It's, calling it intelligence itself is a bit of a misnomer because it's kind of machine, there's the old saying that garbage in, garbage out. So if you use AI, say, to recruit faculty, whatever, biases people have had, whatever they say on their CV, describing themselves and so on, will be the data on the basis of which would say the most, or whether you do it to find a life partner, ask AI, who would be compatible, what kind of person should I get married to? The data it'll use is data that it's been given. And people all lie about themselves. Somebody would say, I'm a very, very cheerful person, and then AI would put that person down as very, very cheerful, when in fact it's a morose and somber person who is very difficult to get that person to laugh. So AI has serious limitations. It does not have consciousness. And so there's no real danger as long as we educate young people to be able to think critically, to think for themselves, and to think in the first place, instead of just looking at the screen and closing their minds, we would be all right. So AI can be a help. Like any technology, it is a technology. You can use a knife to cut vegetables. You can use a knife to kill another person. A sharp knife is a good knife. But to what purpose would you use it for? Right? So that's a judgment we need to make as people. But we don't have to reject the AI. And so we have to ask ourselves a question with which I began. if sharpness is a good quality in a knife, what are the good qualities in a human being that is equivalent to the sharpness that's essential for a good knife? And if you ask that, then you'd say, ethics, cultivating the virtues of courage, truthfulness, compassion, caring about other people. These are the things that make good human beings. So that's the kind of thinking we need to do for ourselves.
Well said, sir. One last question I would like to take here. So, do you think it's time to change our thinking from linear to metrics in
Well,
order
I
to
don't
create?
know
Yeah.
what's meant by metrics here, but the
So
world.
basically, if yeah, I can just rephrase the question if you want me to. So the participant exactly asked that is it the time to change our thinking from linear thinking into metrics thinking in order to create new knowledge with different types of skills?
Absolutely. I think much of our conventional disciplines have been linear, right? So Newtonian mechanics is linear. It's static. Conventional economics is also static because you want to find an equilibrium, a point at which supply and demand would be equal, right? Where the market will clear. Now, no market, actually, there is no equilibrium in the real world. There's no such thing. The real world is full of uncertainties, right? So modern day economists take inspiration from quantum physics, because quantum physics begins with uncertainty. So the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is that if you know the velocity of a particle for sure, you will not know its location. That will be uncertain. But if you know the location, you won't know the velocity. And the observer himself influences what you're observing. Now, it's another insight. So complexity is the name of, is what the world is. So linear thinking is not going to help. Non-linear methods, feedbacks, systems approach, thinking of the effects of multiple factors on something, that kind of understanding, that kind of knowledge is what we ought to focus on. And we are getting there. I think a lot of disciplines are beginning to understand that they need to depart from linearity and then factor in complexity in various ways. And it's developing. And so we have a whole field called complexity economics, which we have in our university. We're beginning to teach that to students. And then another important part is to enable people to understand something about development has completely ignored a dimension of human life which has to do with our spirituality, right? There is a saying in the Bible, man does not live by bread alone. But then what else does man need? That's a question. We all seem to have a sense of asking ourselves a question: why are we here? What is our true self? What is the purpose or meaning of life? Why is the world in the way it is? These large and important questions must also come into everyday discourse in a university if you want to make the world or understand the world and therefore make it a better place.
Thank you so much, sir. And we are really grateful to you for joining us for this global summit on ESG and sustainability. We also would like to convey our regards to Professor C. Rajkumar.
Yes, he's not able to be with you.
So we are really grateful to you for this wonderful session, and we hope that our audience enjoyed this session and have taken a lot of learnings from this, and will surely implement these sustainable practices in their life. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So may I leave?
So with this, we come to an end of the session. Professor Sudarshan, on behalf of Atlas Skilltech University, heartfelt gratitude and thank you very much. We do hope and look forward to collaborate. And I was truly listening in. And I just want to share one thing. I just, we used to say we Google things, I just Google things, but I would like to say I just chat GPT'd something. And I wrote, describe Professor Sudarshan in one word. Of course, I put in the prompt about your brief, and it just said distinguished. So it just gave me one word.
Well, that's because it's picked up from, some lectures are called distinguished lecture series and so on. So it's not very intelligent.
Well, so the reason I'm saying this is to make it sound intelligent is the reason I'm saying it out over here, and that's because we've heard in to what you've just said. So that has.
Aditya, may I add
Yes.
something? It is the dry humor that Professor Sudarshan brought into every answer to the question that was asked is what leaves us wanting more of it, sir. And we extend an invitation to you to engage more on this subject of SDGs and the public policies that you feel are very necessary for our country to make a leap into what we called as the most developed nations. We really, really would appreciate if you consent to engage more with us, sir.
I'd be very happy to do that. Every time I go and meet another set of people, I learn new things. And so it's a kind of mutual benefit. I think we must have more such interactions.
Certainly.
And, so I'm very happy that, Rajkumar introduced me to, I visited your premises in the early stages when, the various in studios and workplaces were being set up. It's a truly innovative idea. As I said, it's no longer universities of the future should stop being, discipline centered, politics, economics, and so on. And in a way, go back because you see, I learned in Cambridge that Isaac Newton was not called a physicist, he was not called a mathematician, he was not called a theologist, but he was all that. His field was called natural philosophy. And he spent a lot of time, researching the gospel, the Bible, and made great contributions to mathematics and to physics. And so he wasn't pigeonholed into you're a physicist and you know nothing about chemistry. That we need to overcome. And the world is, complexity requires that we become transdisciplinary. Sometimes I feel I'm probably becoming anti-disciplinary because you see, disciplines, like in any profession, a chartered accountant would say, I'll know the tax law, I'll help you. A lawyer in corporate law would say, I know corporate law, company law, contract. And these specializations have enabled people to make money. Oh, doctors, why don't you treat a patient as a complete human being? Why do you want to say, oh, now I've looked at your throat, nothing wrong with your throat, now go to the chest specialist. Oh, and then that person would say, no, go to the liver specialist. But you're dealing with one human being, a mind and a body. That, you see, this excessive specialization has enabled us to advance the frontiers of knowledge, but in the process has lost sight of what is the purpose of that knowledge. If you want to heal a person, you cannot say, I can only do, your bones and I don't know anything else, right? And the old GPs of the old days would diagnose you by looking at you, by what you smell like, or by your pulse. With all these MRIs and scans and so on, it's all become very commercial. And so that's why I say internal goods, internal standards of excellence. Let's not focus on all these external goods, making more money. The more specialized you are, the more money you can make. But are you serving the ultimate purpose of making lives of human beings better? Is the question to ask.
So you are leaving us with a lot of food for thought. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
thank you very much. We come to an end of the session for today, and thank you for joining in. We look forward to having you join in once again tomorrow for the finale of AAROHAN. It's going to be a great session. I don't think I'll be speaking about what's in tomorrow, but I'm sure there's enough out there about what's in tomorrow. So see you tomorrow. Good night. Have fun. Bye-bye.